Hey guys, Bryan here from Liquid Concepts. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how to mix the primer. So of course, if you have been on the website, you've probably seen our DTM epoxy primer. Now, if you've bought this and you're curious about how to mix it or anything like that, let's kind of go over a couple of the things that you need to know before you get to mixing. So of course, number one, you're going to need a paint mixing cup. Now, of course, there is tons of different options available, but you will need some sort of system to go ahead and mix this up, because we are going to be mixing by volume. So you're going to need something like this, so then that way you can have all of these different ratios on here, and that way we can mix this up correctly to make sure that everything is sprayed out the way that it needs to be. So let's go ahead, let's talk a little bit about the primer, and let's get started. So a couple of things to note. This primer is an epoxy primer, and it's going to be mixed at a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, there is a couple of different variations of that ratio that we can do depending on the application. So if you're just needing a super high build primer, now again, it will not dry quickly, but if you're needing that high build thickness of the primer itself, you're going to be wanting to mix it at a 2-to-1 ratio. So we're going to have 2 parts of the P250 to 1 part of the epoxy primer activator, the P251. Now, let's say that you wanted to make this into a sealer and you wanted it a lot thinner coating instead of a thicker coating. If that's the case, then you're going to be mixing it at a different ratio, and that ratio is going to be 2-to-1 to 1/2, all the way up to 2-to-1 to 1. So what we're going to have is we're going to have 2 parts of the primer to 1 part of the activator, and then a 1/2 part or a full part of a reducer. Now, again, you can use a medium reducer, fast reducer, slow reducer, but you will need to have that reducer to help thin everything out. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be mixing, why we're going to be mixing it like that, and what applications that's going to be used for. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be using this for. So of course, if you haven't seen the other video for our primer, definitely check that out. It goes into a lot more in depth on what you can use this for, how to use it, and of course why and what applications. But pretty much a quick little overview is if you just want a really thick primer, maybe you want to sand some parts out or something like that, but you still want to be able to go directly over a bare metal application or something of that effect, then this package right here, the 2-to-1, is going to be the way to go. So of course you have 2 parts of the primer to 1 part of the hardener. Now, let's say that you've already got a really slick and smooth finish and you just want something to really bite into that product and then really get a good bond, as well as giving your base coat another good bond to go over it with, then that's where you're going to be using this primer as a sealer, which is going to be sprayed out a lot thinner, and it's going to make it to where everything is a lot more smooth. If you're wanting to be using that as a sealer, then that's going to make it to where you're going to be using this at a 2-to-1 to 1/2 ratio. Or if you want to slick it out even a little bit more and make it lay out really nice, just like a really good paint or a clear coat would, what we would actually recommend as well is a 2-to-1 to 1 mixing ratio. And of course you can see all of this on the back here. It'll show you as a primer you can mix it at a 2-to-1, and as a sealer you can mix it at 2-to-1 to 1/2, or you can even go all the way up to 1 full part with the reducer to really get that slicked out. So let's talk about mixing. So let's say that we wanted to go with the primer alone, which is going to be a 2-to-1 ratio. So this is going to be a very simple ratio. We have 2 parts of this to 1 part of that. Now, if you have your paint mixing cup, you can do it by the ratios that are on this little column right here, or you can also go by the equal ratio marks that are right here as well. So let's say that you wanted to get a mixture, then one thing that you could do is if you wanted, say, 15 ounces of material, you could do 10 ounces of this to 5 ounces of this. That would equal a 2-to-1 ratio because you have 10 parts of one and 5 parts of the other, so that gives you a 2-to-1. Now, if you're looking at the mixing ratios themselves, you just have numbers. And so this is going to be a very simple process. So we're going to go to the first column right here, which is going to be the 2. And then we're going to fill it up to, let's just say, the 4 mark. And then if we know that we're filling it up to the 4 mark, then we will go and add our activator up to the next 4 mark that's in the next column over. Now, if we do that and we fill that up to a 4 and a 4, then that will give us approximately about 8 ounces of material in this cup right here. Now, of course, if you needed to have more or less, depending on the application that you're doing, whether you're doing a lot of parts or very few parts, then of course you can adjust that number depending on what you're needing. So you can go at a 2 to 2 or a 5 to 5 or even an 8 to 8, depending on how much material that you need mixed up for the job itself. So now let's talk about spraying this as a sealer. Just for ease of use, we're going to go ahead and say that we're going to mix this at a 2 to 1 to 1 mix ratio. So 2 parts of the primer, 1 part of the activator, 1 part of the reducer. Now, of course, what we're going to do is find how much material we need fully for that job. So let's just say that we needed about 10 ounces of material, which is going to equal somewhere around the 4 mark again. Now, in this case right here, what we're going to do is the same exact thing like what we did before at the 2 to 1, but now we're just adding another extra part, which is going to be our reducer. So if we needed about 10 ounces of material for this cup itself, then we're going to know that we go with the 4 mark on all of these columns. So of course, on the number 2 column right here, we go up to the first 4, and that's going to be with the primer itself. And then on the next column over, we're going to go up to the next 4, which is going to be for this hardener right here. And then of course for the last ratio, the 1 part of the reducer, we're going to go up to again the 4 mark as well. And so now that gives us a mixing ratio of 2 to 1 to 1, and it gives us a sealer that we can now be applying as a very slick finish, and it should lay out really, really well because of the addition of the reducer. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Of course, I know this is definitely a super simple video, but it will definitely help you out in the long term in knowing how to mix these properly, so that way you get the best overall coating for the job that you're doing. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them below. We'd love to hear from you on anything hydrographics related, as well as if you have any questions on this product itself or any others, definitely let us know. We'd always love to hear from you on that as well. If you're interested in any of these, definitely check out the website in the description below. It's going to have everything that you need for the hydrographics, including the primer and all of the accessories that go with it there on the website. I'm Brian from Liquid Concepts, and this is how we customize your world. We'll see you guys next time.